Hello, everyone. Cecil Martin here.
Hey, this is Hunter Henry.
What's up, man? This is Max Crosby, part of Raider Nation.
Hey, this is Ross Tucker, former NFL offensive lineman.
Hey, it's Tyler Lockett of the Seattle Seahawks.
Hey, this is Jerry Judy, wide receiver for the Denver Broncos, and you're listening to the 14-Yard NFL Podcast.
Hello and welcome back to the Full 10 Yards NFL Podcast. I hope you had a very good Christmas. I'm your host, Sam Moores, and it is New Year's Eve. I was going to say New Year's Day. It's not quite 2025 yet. And we've just had a long week 17. Started all the way back on Wednesday last week, and it has changed a lot in the standings. So joining me to talk all about it is Liam Horsley, host of the Betting Podcast and the Go for Two podcast on our networks. I hope you had a good Christmas, mate. And did you get to watch the Chiefs on Christmas Day?
Yeah, I did. I watched it a little bit later, maybe 8 o'clock-ish. But yeah, I got to watch the full game, which was good. I decided to not watch the second game, which I think was a good choice, which we'll talk about in a bit. But yeah, I thought Netflix coverage was great, so it was a good watch. And yeah, Santa gifted me the 1 seed as my Christmas present, so I'm happy with that.
Yeah, I was about to say I was really impressed with the Netflix coverage. I watched the first game and then we sat down and watched Gavin and Stacey in the later window. And again, I'm glad I missed that game because the second game was absolutely terrible. No, I thought the Netflix coverage was quite good as well. For international viewers, we had Scott Hansen and Drew Brees in between when there would be ad breaks in America as well. So that was nice because it means less adverts. And it was obviously. I mean, Scott Hansen's loved, and Drew Brees is an okay pundit. Scott
Hansen's loved, but I don't know if he was great. That was my only downside.
Yeah,
I'm not saying I prefer adverts, but they weren't great. Those two individuals, to be honest. But
I guess it's a bit like watching the games on Sky. It's like when the analysis is constant. Maybe you would prefer an advert just to break it up a little bit every now and then.
I prefer Sky's pundits, so that's a start. But a little bit too much Scott Hansen. I thought Breeze did better than Hansen, but you could tell that Hansen was more about the social media side of things, wasn't he? Getting the fans
about to say loads of tweets.
Yeah, but it was good, and the pre-game coverage was really great. Manto Te'o was a bit of a random choice, but everyone else was extremely good.
Yeah, absolutely. We'll start with Christmas Day, where the Chiefs and the Ravens showed their quality over the whole sort of weekend. Really, it will start 6 days ago with those two games. We spoke a little bit about them on the last podcast. We previewed the games on the Saturday, and then sort of mentioned these games because the 4 teams were playing each other. We previewed the Chiefs win over the Texans and the Ravens win over the Steelers last time. And then the 2 opponents for the Chiefs and Ravens switched as part of that unique Christmas Day on Netflix. And obviously both teams made it 2-0 over the Christmas period by dominating their opponents in pretty much 2 blowouts, to be honest with you. Obviously we'll start at the Chiefs. As you mentioned earlier, you got the 1 seed of 15-1. I'm sure it hasn't felt like it at times this year, but in those 2 games, the Chiefs are starting to look very dangerous again, I think. And it's just at the right time now.
Yeah, definitely. Yeah, very different to last year where they started to get worse as the season. They started off bad, really good in the middle, and then it went worse and worse as the year went on. Then they peaked randomly in the playoffs, which was good. But they're definitely peaking at the right time. Offense looks really good now. The metrics have been great on offense for the last 2 games. So that's a good sign since Hollywood Brown's been back. And then the defense as well now is officially holding teams to the lowest points per game in the NFL and the second best run defense. So the defense, there's still big plays to be had, I think, on the Chiefs defense, but you're not getting consistent good play on offense against the Chiefs defense anymore. The defense has been really good. So, yeah, it was a really good day. I thought the offense played great. And I think you kind of got a scene of what a lot of Chiefs fans have been saying, that Travis Kelce is more just keeping it on lock until the playoffs. Because the minute they needed to win the game for the 1 seed, he gets like 70-odd yards, touchdown, however many catches he got. I think it was a really, really good performance. It wasn't a great day for the Steelers, which we'll talk about, but yeah, the Chiefs look really good, and then they'll rest a lot of players next week and come back off like a 24-day rest period probably, because they'll probably get the Saturday game. That's what will probably happen. They're not going to give a team 20-odd days rest and then put the Chiefs on Sunday for an extra day. That they wouldn't do that. So, it was a great position for the Chiefs to be in. The injuries were limited, so yeah, I think it's a good position for a Chiefs fan.
They did the same last year. They gave no, did they give the Ravens a Saturday last year? I can't remember. I know.
Yeah, I think
No,
they did. Yeah, I'm only saying that from the Athletic Football Show. One of the pods I listened to said that the last 2 years they've given the one seeds in NFC, AFC. They've got a Saturday game because then it meant the teams that play on the wild card get the full 7 days.
Interesting.
So yeah, I'd imagine the Chiefs will end up playing on the Saturday. At least one of the one seeds will play on the Saturday. But yeah, overall, yeah, really good game, and yeah, Mahomes, Kelsey, etc. was really good. So I'm excited. A bit sad I don't get to watch them for 20 odd days now, but I'm not going to moan about that. That's all the other fans.
Yeah, it's you're starting to see different people get involved. Obviously, Andy Reid's brilliant at that. It's the mix between Pacheco and Kareem Hunt on the ground. You've got Noah Gray making plays. He's had quite a few touchdowns the last couple of weeks as well. Obviously, Kelsey when he's needed, stepping up on third down, especially that's what he's always done, and we saw that in this game as well. It just showed, and obviously Mahomes. We've not even mentioned the injury. I mean, there are reports that they may rest him, but as the week went on, it was getting obvious that Mahomes responded to the injury on the two games before, really well, to the point where you couldn't even tell that he was hurt, really.
Yeah, in the Steelers game, you couldn't tell. I know it probably just sounds like fan talk or QB talk, but he said in previous years when he got the high ankle sprain, it stops him from kind of over scrambling. He just stays in the pocket and makes throws. You could see in this game that it actually did help his play because he was quite stationary, and then when he ran, he just ran. He wasn't kind of scrambling around. He was making a decision. When I go, I go. When I want to throw, I'll just sit in the pocket. And yeah, you could barely tell after the first drive once he got warm that he'd had any injuries. He obviously had that run with the little flip past P. Ryan on third down, which was very typical Mahomes, and he looked pretty healthy. And yeah, he's also had the least amount of hits in the last 2 weeks versus the for any 2 week period in the season before that. So Joe Tooney playing well at left tackle has also made a difference to keeping him upright, because you wouldn't want him on a bad ankle to then be getting hit every time. That was the main worry, I think, for the fans.
Yeah, I was about to say, we spoke about in the last podcast the move for Tooney to left tackle, and yeah, you hardly even noticed the offensive line, which I think it was top. It might have even been the worst pressure rate allowed by tackles going into that game, or something stupid like that. There's so many. Yeah, it was terrible. So going from that to hardly noticing it is good. Obviously 3 or 4 weeks ago, we sort of pinpointed this Chiefs-Steelers game as a potential 1-seed matchup when the Chiefs were still not looking great. The Steelers were on this run, and obviously they were leading the division at the time. Now Pittsburgh could fall as low as 6th after these 3 straight losses. It's a really tough stretch for them, isn't it?
Yeah, a really tough stretch. And they're looking more like the team most of us thought they would be. Maybe not at 10 wins. I think if you said before the season they'd have 9 wins going into week 18, with Tomlin, you'd be like, that sounds like a very typical Steelers season. But because they got 10 wins so early, everyone thought they were going to be a 12, 13, 14 win team. And I think they've regressed back to what people thought they would. Obviously, Pickens' injury for 2 weeks didn't help. The defense seemed to not be happy with Minkah Fitzpatrick when you listen to the quotes. So there's some issues on that side of the ball. But for me, I think Russell Wilson's play has also declined. And they've just gone for a really hard stretch. They beat up a lot on bad teams earlier in the season. Everyone who's got a podcast said 3 or 4 weeks ago the Steelers have got the hardest end of the season in the NFL, and they played playoff team after playoff team, and now unfortunately for them, they're losing those games. So I think some of it's Russ, some of it's the defense. They've definitely got some injuries on that side of the ball. The offensive line, I think, was doing well against bad teams, but then when you see them against good teams, it's a fine offensive line. It's not a very good offensive line. I think Russell Wilson behind a fine offensive line just leads to sacks and some turnovers like we saw in this game. So yeah, I think they're still a good team. But they're the opposite of the Chiefs. They're trending in the wrong direction, I think, for the playoffs. Yeah,
we've seen sort of more like end of Seattle, Denver Russ than we did at the start of the Pittsburgh run with him, which is where we saw some vintage Russ at points. I mean, they lost the lead of the division with these 2 losses over the Christmas period to the Ravens and obviously the Chiefs. And I mean, they still got a shot at the division. They obviously need the Ravens to lose the round and then to beat the Bengals. But I think it's quite unlikely that all that is going to happen. Obviously on the flip side, respect to Baltimore, because it looked unlikely that they'd be able to do it, win the division when sitting at 8-5. But I mean, they won 2 more games against playoff teams. Lamar showed why he is, in my opinion, the best passer of the football in the league right now. He's just having an insane season again. Obviously, I feel like I say it every week, but he's being underrated in the MVP conversation. Again, Josh Allen's been brilliant. They've both had so many moments, and it's the moments that win the MVP. But obviously, I think this is the best Lamar's ever played, so it is a tough conversation. And obviously, you've got Saquon, who might break the record as well this week. So, I mean, either way, we're going to get a non-one seed MVP for the first time since 2016, which is something we've had the conversation before as well. But with Baltimore, I think the key thing there is that their defense is starting to get better now, which heading into the playoffs is really good news for them. Because this team obviously has been built to be better in the postseason. That's why they got Derrick Henry. That's why they juked about a few more pieces as well. Obviously, I'm higher on them than most. I think I've said that a lot this season. In the power rankings, I've always been like in the top 2 or 3 people, ranking the Ravens. But I think personally they are starting to show they are contenders because they can be in shootouts if they can get their defense to a level like they have done recently. Obviously, against the Texans is not difficult because of how banged up that offense is. They've had a brutal schedule, and yet they are 7-3 against playoff teams, which going into the playoffs is really good.
Yeah, definitely. We spoke about the 2 Christmas Day wins. They're the best 2 teams in the NFL against playoff teams, the Ravens and the Chiefs. So you can't sit here and say the Ravens aren't a legitimate contender when you look at the records. They are what they are. They always have a bad game out of nowhere, and when they have a bad game, they have a really bad game. And I think some of that, to be honest, is probably Lamar. And I think some of it's Harbaugh as well. I think it gets to the point where he doesn't suss out they're having a bad game, and he keeps trying to run it, and maybe Lamar's trying to pass it, and then they get to the point where they're 17-3 down, and they're like, oh no, now I've got to pass it every down, and that's not what you want when you've got an offensive line built to run block. But anyway, in terms of this, this game and then the game before against the Steelers as well, they've just looked really, really good. I know you mentioned the defense. They were 31st in the NFL through week 10 in DVOA. Since week 10, they're number 1. So they've gone from the second worst defense to the best. And that's also the same week Carl Hamilton went from playing nickel corner into playing safety. So I think some of it's that. Some of it's just them getting better as a team, and some of it's Marlon Humphrey kind of rolling back the years and playing like one of the best corners in the NFL like he has this year. So, yeah, the defense looks really good. They still haven't got great records against elite passers, but they don't play against many of those. And the last time they did against Josh Allen, they played really well. It's really only kind of Mahomes, Burrow, that level of player that plays really well against them. They've done a good job against Josh Allen. But yeah, they'll be happy. I think there's an argument they'd rather be the 5th seed, so they don't have to play Buffalo in the second round, because that's probably the team they want to avoid. But again, they prefer home field in that first round versus having to go on the road somewhere else. And they're playing really well at the moment. I think if the offensive line can carry on holding up, then they're going to be a hard out in the playoffs.
Yeah, the defense, other than the back end, was really good all year. They could stop the run. They got pressure on the quarterback as well. It was just, they got beat deep a lot. Now the Hamilton move back happened, and then Humphrey, his plays got better and better and better as the years gone on. And again, now they are really scary. And then just a word on the Texans, really, because they're just too injured to do anything in the playoffs, aren't they?
I think they're too injured, but you can't. Someone who I think me and you did the QB rankings. I think we had Stroud similar. I know we had a couple of differences like Herbert and stuff, but Stroud we were pretty similar on, if I remember rightly. But you can't no one could sit here and say he's actually played that well, because the first 6 weeks he was playing really well. Since week 7, he's the second worst quarterback by success rate in the NFL. So he isn't playing well either. Some of it's injuries, but you'd still look at his weapons and say he's arguably got better weapons than Josh Allen. He's arguably still got better weapons than Patrick Mahomes has had most of the season, and he's not playing like those 2 guys play. So I loved him in college, loved him last year. He's just regressed, unfortunately. I think some of that is the offensive line. He's just got hit so much that his style of play is starting to differ, and he's just checking it down or holding on to the ball too long when he can't see a rush. So, I think some of it's injury, some of it's his play, and then the other is Bobby Slowick. I think he'll get 1 more year as offensive coordinator, but when you play them, you just know what they're going to do. They're going to run it on first down. If you stop the run on first down, then you're quids in against them, because they're just not aggressive enough on second and third down to cause an issue. So it is injuries, like you said, but I also think it's the play from the quarterback and the play caller. And we'll see. The Chiefs and the Ravens game, their defense didn't play well either, but their defense has still been really good this season. So it wouldn't surprise me in the playoffs if their defense ramps up again and they cause an upset or two. But then they haven't got the offense, I don't think, to go and beat two of the teams we all keep talking about in the top three of the AFC.
Yeah, I love that defense. I put Derek Stingley in my All-Pro team a couple of weeks ago. I think he's having a great season. Yeah, and again, in fact, obviously the pass rush is scary as hell, leading the league in sacks at points this year. Like they've got a very good defense. Okay, let's go on to the weekend now, and it was a great weekend for the LA teams. They both secured their playoff spots on a triple header on Saturday. The Chargers won the opening game 40-7, blowing out the Patriots to move to 10-6 on the season. It was the Justin Herbert and Lab McConkey show, being up on a terrible Pats defense and making some fantasy players in championship games either very happy or wounded with the amount of points that McConkey got. I was on the better side in like an 8-team league with friends. I ended up beating Charlie in that championship game, which was really good. Won by 5 points, but again, those Lab McConkey points did help me. And yeah, I mean, really weird game. Obviously, the Patriots are awful. Drake May wasn't great in this game. He's had better games, but he's again in a terrible situation. That offensive line sucks. Like, I mean, I can't nitpick that, to be honest with you. Now the Chargers have gone 10-6 this year. They're only going to get better. They could be the 5 seed, which is crazy. Great year one for Harbaugh and Greg Roman and Jesse Minter, isn't it?
Yeah, definitely. Yeah, Jesse Minter's a good shout out. He's coached really hard on defense, and the defense, to be honest, has got worse throughout the season, but it seems to be more the health of the players. Like, it just happens every year to the Chargers, and even though Bosa and Mack have played a lot of snaps, they're on the injury report a lot, and you can tell they're just not quite the same. At the start of the season, they were pass rushing people to death, but they're not doing that. And he still managed to coach a pretty good defense. In this game, he caused Drake May loads of problems. Again, you mentioned it, offensive line is not great, weapons aren't great, but other teams haven't been able to cause New England as many problems as the Chargers did. So I think that's a good shout out to Derwin James and Jesse Minter. And then the offense is getting better. I found it quite funny that everyone thought they would just run it non-stop. Like, they were obviously going to establish the run. They will do that. They'll do that in the playoffs. But Harbaugh's not stupid. He knows he's got Justin Herbert, in my opinion, one of the best quarterbacks in the NFL. But even if you don't like him, he's top 10. So you're going to throw it. You're not going to run it 38 times. You're going to throw it 24, 26, 28 times. And the passing game looks really good now. He's kind of found the ones he trusts with Lab McConkey, Stone Smart, Will Dissly. J.K. Dobbins came back in this game, looked pretty healthy. And then Quentin Johnson is Quentin Johnson. He'll have one game where he catches 2 passes for 80 yards. He'll have another one where he drops it and doesn't help. But in the games he does catch it, the offense will be really good because the other 3 or 4 players are pretty consistent. So, yeah, they look really good. The culture seems to have changed for them. But they did feast on a team that probably needs another reset and rebuild around Drake May. And in my opinion, probably needs a brand new GM and head coach. But we'll see if the Crafts bite on that or if they stick with who they got.
Yeah, I actually really agree with you there. I actually, I've been a very harsh Herbert critic, but again, this year with what he's had, I think we're really starting to see him elevate, which is something that he has been criticised for, like not really doing previously. Like, as in everything there with the 2 great receivers and the offensive line that he's had, and obviously Eckler, and they've always had a decent run game. Like this year, obviously that is stripped back, and I mean, he's getting good PFF grade after good PFF grade, and he's elevating the players around him. Obviously, we mentioned that Disley and Smart. McConkey's been a great help because he can just get open. And yeah, I mean, he's been a top 5 quarterback this year. Like, no one can deny that, I think.
Yeah, agreed. Yeah, he's done really well at not holding on to the ball as well, as long as in some of the situations. My kind of downside with her, but the reason why I don't think he's as good as Allen and Mahomes, even though I've always had him high, was because he'll look to take the check down first rather than wait for the big play. And I think this year he's become much better at intermediate, and he's always been good at deep passing, but he's been better at that kind of, right, let me throw it. If it's 3rd and 9, I'll throw it, or 2nd and 9, I'll throw it 10, 11 yards, whereas he used to throw it 3 yards and hope the running back gets the other 6 yards, and then he'd go on 3rd down, whereas he's been a bit more aggressive. And I think that's probably Harbaugh kind of coaching him up and getting that side out of him. So I think he's been really good. Like I said, PFF love him. I would say it does help that his 2 tackles are incredible. They are probably the best.
Yeah.
Second best tackle duo. The Eagles are going to have the best until Lane retires. But I think, they look incredible. And I think next year we'll probably see them battling with the Chiefs for the division and probably being a more 12, 13 win type team rather than whatever they're going to finish 10 win team.
Yeah, and it'd be really fun to see as well. Okay, going over to the other team in LA, they were back home. Obviously, the Chargers playing in New England, and they needed to beat the Cardinals and see the strength of victory tiebreaker go their way to win the NFC West. And both things came in, securing their postseason berth. They've now won 9 of the last 11 games, 5 in a row, starting the year 1-4. They've got everyone back healthy now. Offense has been up and down at points, but they're getting hot going into the postseason, aren't they?
Yeah, a little bit. In terms of wins, they are. I don't think they
Yeah.
played very well in this game, to be honest. They're very different to the Chargers. Chargers are getting better across the board. I know the defense is not as good, but they were good in that game. But it feels like the Rams are kind of, I used the words on our podcast this morning, limping through a little bit. Like what they're not doing is they're not having the stupid turnovers and giving up big plays to lose them games. The defense has really tightened that up. But I don't think the offense is playing as consistently well. Like, apart from Puka, it's not as consistent as you'd like. Now, I love the Rams. I'm always a pro-Rams person. In the playoffs, I think they could beat anyone. But they're not showing enough consistency for me. But I do like the fact they've got in a week early and now they can rest some of their older players. I wouldn't care if I was them about the 4 or 3 seed. I would just rest Stafford. I'd rest Puka. I'd rest Cup. I'd rest everyone. And I'd just have a whole week. And then whoever we play in round 1, we play in round 1. But yeah, it was good for them to win, but I think they were very lucky to win this game. They probably weren't the best team, and that takes a lot for me to say that because I'm a bit of a Rams fan when it comes to NFC teams.
It's very Cardinals to lose a game like that, isn't it?
Yeah, it was very Cardinals, very Kyler.
We've seen that a lot this year.
Yeah, with that pick. But yeah, I think the Rams need to play better. But like you said, 5 weeks ago, they looked out of it. So they have really improved in terms of the overall team, but the offense needs to be a bit better than this if they want to beat someone.
The run game has been a bit disappointing, to be honest with you. I think it's not been as dominant as it has been in the past as well. Yeah. And obviously the offensive line coming back healthy helped. And there are those few games where they were ball livers, with obviously Nakua having like 40, 50-point games in fantasy. We saw those games at some point, on those win streaks. And you mentioned it there. I feel like a bit like some other teams, like the Packers, for example, that they're going to be a difficult, even if they lose, they're going to be a very difficult game in the playoffs for any team.
Yeah.
Whoever they play.
Yeah, traditionally, to win the Super Bowl, get to Super Bowl, you need a top 5 offense. Most teams in the NFC playoffs have a chance in those 3 weeks of being a top 5 offense, and the Rams definitely could be that. But like you said, they just need to play a bit better. The run game needs to be better. The offensive line's come back, but the right tackle situation has been in and out injury-wise, and that seems to have made a bit of a difference. But yeah, they could easily get hot, and they're going to play the first game, obviously at home, being a division winner, which is a good position for them to be in. But they probably need the offensive line to play a bit better, and Matt Stafford to play a little bit better for them to have a chance. But like you said, they can get hot against anyone. They're very similar to the Packers in that regard. One team's young, one team's old, but they're very, very similar with their offense.
The Rams' defense, it's been exposed at points, but their young players can make plays. They've been making plays all year at good moments as well. So definitely. Certainly the plays. I mean, in this game as well, Trey McBride touchdown that happened finally.
Annoying that it was against me in a fantasy championship.
Was it?
Touchdown,
yeah.
But yeah, he had
17 games, over 1,000 yards as well before he got a touchdown.
Yeah, I think he dropped one, or maybe there's a flag or something earlier in the game, and then they got him one on like that little motion kind of screenplay. And he looked pretty happy with himself. But yeah, he's had a really good season as well, to be honest. Even Marvin Harrison's actually had a good season, but it just doesn't look as good because of all the other offensive rookies that have played way better. But yeah, it was good to see Trey McBride finally get in the end zone, because that was one of the craziest statistics I'd seen about how many... it's not even just how many yards and stuff he's had, it's how many targets and receptions he's had across the season. It's just like, yeah, he can't get himself a touchdown, but I'm glad he got in.
Okay. The middle game on Saturday was one of the games of the week. Overtime was needed to separate the Broncos and the Bengals. The Broncos needed a win or a tie to clinch a playoff spot. A loss will keep the Bengals, Colts, and Dolphins alive going into Sunday. And Cincy won to keep their season alive, and the other 7 and 8 teams too coming into the week, beating the Broncos 30-24 with a walk-off T. Higgins touchdown. Brilliant game. I really enjoyed watching this. I was watching this in a hotel in London. Both Burrow and Bo Nix had some brilliant moments. We were talking in the group chat about it, and I mean, Liam, you mentioned it there. I think Sean Payton lost the game by not going for 2, or hesitating over it. And I mean, I guess you assume that he should have gone for it after that Bo Nix touchdown, which was really good moment on fourth down.
Yeah, definitely. Well, I think he kind of lost it twice because I think they were too conservative in overtime twice, especially when they got it back.
Yeah, wasn't it 2 3 and outs they had?
Yeah, it was. Yeah, it was. And what they ran on first down both times without McLaughlin, who's been their better player, and then they threw on second down as well, but they threw a yard from the line of scrimmage. So like both sets of plays were identical, and it was so easy for the Bengals, who obviously aren't a good defense, as we all know, to get a stop. So I think those two were probably worse for me than to go for two. But yeah, I think I would have gone for two. I think you just use your brain there and say, I'm going to get into overtime against, Burrow, Higgins, Chase, how they're playing on offense. They're probably going to score at least 3. Maybe they'll score a touchdown. No, they didn't score a touchdown on the first drive. But I think my head would go, we've just got all the momentum from that big play. Their defense has been bad all year. I would have just gone for 2, personally. But even when he didn't go for 2, I still think he screwed it up in overtime. And yeah, even when he took his timeouts at random times as well that didn't kind of leave any issues for the Bengals. So yeah, I think they probably lost this game. They went away from the run as well in the second half when they were winning more than they should have. So I think this game was, you've got to go and win it, which the Bengals did. But I think this was more of a Broncos loss for me. And I know Charlie in the group chat felt similar, that they lost this game rather than the Bengals winning it. But I think that's just who he is, to be honest, Sean Payton. He is a conservative coach when he has a young quarterback. It's just we haven't seen that happen as much because when they've won games, the defense has been really good. Now the defense is starting to regress. The decisions he makes on offense are more important, and I just think this game wasn't a good game. But I wouldn't say Zach Taylor had a great game either in terms of his game management. Both coaches were probably bailed out by their quarterbacks, I think, in this game.
Well, do you know what? I mean, Zach Taylor's probably kept his job with the streak the Bengals have gone, winning, was it 4 in a row to keep their season alive? And I mean, there is very much to play going into the final game. The Dolphins also won to keep their season alive, beating the Browns 20-3 without Tua Tagovailoa, whose hip injury got worse in the 49ers win last week. He sustained it in the Texans game, got through it. And then got through the Niners game. It was questionable going into that game, played that game, and then re-aggravated it or made it worse. And it's the same hip that was surgically repaired after the big hit at Alabama. I actually thought Tyler Huntley looked pretty decent in this game, especially with how much pressure he was getting on the left-hand side from Patrick Paul after throw-on Armstead went out. Because obviously, everyone's going to struggle against Myles Garrett, let alone a second-round rookie. But Dolphins got through it. Won. I mean, Dorian Thompson-Robinson was terrible. I think he had one of the worst quarterback games of all time in terms of in some metrics. And because of that, Dolphins moved up to the 8th seed. Because the Colts, who had the tiebreaker over both the Bengals and the Dolphins, they lost to the Giants, putting Shane Steichen and Chris Ballard even further on the hot seat. We'll talk about a little bit about that game later on because there's another storyline coming out of that game. But long story short, Indy are out. The Broncos, they're the current 7 seed, the only AFC team not to secure their playoff spot so far. Everyone else is in. And should they lose to the Chiefs this Sunday, the opportunity will be there for either the Dolphins or the Bengals, depending on who wins the games and whatever, for them to get in as either the 8th or the 9th seed right now. But with the Chiefs at 11-5, at 15-1, and the 1 seed secured, then they're not going to be full strength. And you'd like to think Denver should win on Sunday?
You'd like to think it, but it wouldn't surprise me if they didn't win, to be honest. Because you can't rest that many starters. It's not like other sports where you can bench your whole team. You haven't got enough players in your, they're not going to have enough healthy, active players. And there's going to be the older guys that are going to get rested immediately. So that only gives you a pool of others, younger players that you can rest. So I think the Chiefs' defense will probably be about half strength, and the offense will probably be pretty weak. The offense, Kelsey, Hopkins, and Mahomes are not going to play. But yeah, you'd like to think they could win. I would just say with the way their defense is trending, Carson Wentz is going to be one or two things, isn't it? It's going to be 150 yards and 2 picks, or it's going to be 300 yards and 2 touchdowns because he's a very aggressive player. He's not going to take the smart decision and check it down sometimes like Mahomes will. He'll just try and rip it because Carson Wentz is playing for a job, isn't he, for next year? So I'd be a little bit worried about that game. I think the Dolphins and the Bengals have a good chance. No offense to you. I think the average fan is like, please don't let the Dolphins get in because it would be the worst playoff game. Whoever they play is going to be a terrible playoff game.
Well, the last 2 years, to be honest with you, the last 2 years the Dolphins have limped into the playoffs. 1 with Skylar Thompson and 2 with no defense. So it mean, it would be an impressive 3-year streak. Bear in mind they've had decimated teams in all 3 years.
Yeah, no, just Snoop Huntley makes it just a disaster
Yeah,
to watch
yeah,
as a neutral.
that's what I mean. It doesn't sound good regarding Tua this week, so it does sound like it probably will be Snoop Huntley.
Yeah, but I think
Yeah,
I would say you are just slightly less likely than the Broncos, but still more likely than the odds. I think the odds are like 20%, but I would say you're more. I think it's more likely than that because I've watched Andy Reid teams enough to know that it doesn't matter who's playing; he's still going to coach a good game. So is Steve Spagnuolo. The Broncos should definitely win, but I don't think they'll win by. It's not going to be like, oh, the Broncos are winning 20-3 at halftime. They've made the
spread's
playoffs.
massive, isn't it? Spread's like 7 points. It's like huge.
Yeah, it won't be a blowout. That's just not the way that Andy Reid coaches. But yeah, I think you guys have got a good chance. The Bengals have got less good chance. Going to need 2 teams to lose, and I just think, the teams you guys are playing, both teams arguably should win. But yeah, it'd be impressive if the Dolphins can somehow limp in. But for the neutral, I think they probably want to see Joe Burrow at Josh Allen in the first round. That's probably what the neutral fan wants to see.
Yeah, trust me, I'd much rather watch that game as well. I'd much rather watch that game. Obviously, a Broncos win versus Carson Wentz and co. They're in. Lose, and the Dolphins win against the Jets. They're in. If both teams lose, the Bengals are in. Both those games are in a late window, by the way. And the Bengals play on Saturday night against the Steelers as well. By the time that game. Yeah. But also, by the time that game, the Steelers could be playing for nothing as well. Obviously, it's a division game. But like, if the Ravens win,
they're the 5 seed, aren't they? Though, because if they lose, they're the 6th seed.
True.
So it depends if Tomlin cares about that. He strikes me as the type of coach that's going to try and win regardless, though. To be honest, I think that'll be the best game out of those 3 teams because the Dolphins game will probably be messy. Chiefs Broncos could be anything, and Adam in our network, who's a Bengals fan, thinks the Steelers will win that game, but I think it'll be quite a fun game either way. But yeah, we'll see. It's good to have some jeopardy. If the Broncos would have won this weekend, the AFC playoff race would have been a lot more boring going into week 18.
Yeah, and I mean, I'm sure Buffalo would much rather play the Dolphins or the Broncos than Cincinnati as well, because that game's going to be a shootout.
Yeah, from what I've seen on Twitter, it's Buffalo and Ravens fans really don't want the Bengals to get in. A lot of Chiefs fans kind of want the Bengals to get in because they're more likely to beat Josh Allen than the other options. So it gives you 2 chances to get him out before you have to play him. So yeah, I think you're right. The neutrals want them, but yeah, my friend whose best friend is a Bills fan, he's like, he does not want Joe Burrow going into to there against that defense because it's going to be a 30+ point win for someone. Like, as in it's going to be 33-30 or 37-34, whatever. But yeah, we'll see. I think they're the late game on Saturday night, aren't they? Which is a bit annoying. I think they should have put the Ravens late, but I can see why they've done it.
I don't think anyone wants to watch the Browns in prime time. That's what I expect it was. Like, no one wants to watch the Browns in prime time.
Yeah, it makes it more interesting, doesn't it? If the Steelers go and win, they're leading the division, and then Jameis Winston comes out of the tent somehow. He ends up playing, and they're 10-0 up against the Ravens. It makes it more fun. But yeah, you're right. We've seen enough of the Browns this year.
Right, we'll go on to Sunday now, where should the Vikings beat the Packers, they have moved to 14-2 and get a chance at the 1 seed in the NFC. No matter how Detroit did on Monday Night Football against the Niners, they started the game perfectly. Were 27-10 up with 6 minutes left in the fourth quarter, but were made to sweat a bit with 2 late Packers touchdowns. But they did hold on to win 27-25 and iced the game when Sam Darnold hit Cam Akers on a 3rd down. The Vikings just know how to win these one-score games. They're out coaching well-coached teams. And obviously, the Packers are a really well-coached team. They've won other games by 1 score against really well-coached teams as well. And obviously, now Sam Darnold has got so comfortable. The turnovers are coming down. He had 1 in this game, but they're coming down. And he's starting to elevate a lot now. We're starting to see some really good play out with Sam Darnold. Because, and now they've got a very interesting decision to make this offseason because they were predicted to come last in this division by some people. Obviously, people were high on the Bears by many. And now they've got 14 wins and they've got a chance at the 1 seed, which obviously pretty much locks Kevin O'Connell coach of the year, surely, right?
Yeah. You'd be mine anyway. I think I saw Sky do some stupid graphic where Sean McDermott got it, but it's like, how you don't give it to Kevin O'Connell, I don't know. Like, he is clearly one of the best coaches in the NFL, regardless. And in terms of how he's done this year, there's always an argument that, and Harbaugh and Andy Reid, Dan Campbell should get it. But if you look at the talent of the players and the quarterbacks that each of those teams have got, it's like Kevin O'Connell should win it. But yeah, I was looking, and there's been a lot made of obviously one-score games, and that they win a lot of them. But half of their one-score games have been where they've had a massive lead, and someone's just come back in garbage time. They're not the same as the early Chiefs one-score games or the Kirk Cousins Vikings from 2 years ago, where every game was last play of the game.
Yeah, it was like 10-1 or something that year, wasn't it? It was crazy.
Yeah. Whereas this year, I think 5 of their one-score games they were up by more than 17 points, and the other team just came back. Like this game, it was quite close towards the end, but a lot of that was garbage time, and the one turnover that Darnold did have was just at a really bad time. Otherwise, it would have been a 2-score win probably. So yeah, I don't think the one-score games are as bad of an issue or as important of an issue this year because I think they're blowing teams out. But yeah, they're playing really well. In this game, their offensive line was great, even though they've had to trade for a new left tackle.
Only the one sack.
Yeah, they couldn't get any pressure, the Packers, which I think is more of a Packers issue. That's their fatal flaw for me in the playoffs is they're going to have to win shootouts because any elite quarterback they play is going to get too much time in the pocket. Darnold got a lot of time in this game. And then the other thing is the Vikings played man coverage in the second half on like nearly every second and third down, and Packers couldn't get open. And I was one of the people that said, this young group of weapons are really good and we'll see which one emerges. But if no one emerges and they're all just good, everyone's just going to play man coverage against them and just say, right, try and beat our corners one-on-one. And they can't do it, especially without
game. It's the same as last year. It's a different one each game. Sometimes Jaden Reed will have 100 yards. Sometimes they'll have one target for 6 yards or something.
Reed's been pretty bad as well. I think I saw he had 200 yards combined in the last 5 games. And Christian Watson, I think, missed this game. So, yeah, I think it's a bit of both teams. The Vikings defense played incredible, but the Packers are really struggling to beat man and to get pressure on defense. So, yeah. They're 2 of the best teams in the NFC by far. I'd say that they're 2 of the top 4 teams in the NFC. But I would say I've heard people say the Vikings are a top 5. Sorry, the Packers are a top 5 team in the NFL, but I don't think their defense is quite at that level.
That's it's all right against the run. The turnovers obviously have really helped them this year. They had a lot of turnovers. On defense, and that's been a big factor, and it is better than it has been previously. Obviously, their big flaw has been their defense as a whole with Joe Barry the last couple of years. Bit less of a thing with Jeff Hafley this year, but yeah, they're an interesting one because I do feel they're better than the last couple of years, but they're losing all these big games, game after game. Like
to the North teams, the teams that know them that have got enough time to scheme up against them. And they've all got the thing in the North is good offensive lines. Vikings and Lions have offensive lines. That's just a different game for the Packers. I think the Packers haven't won a game where they haven't won the turnover margin. Now they've won the turnover margin a lot because Xavier McKinney's been amazing. But where he doesn't get a turnover, the defense is just fine. It's not terrible like it used to be, but it's just fine. And the offense, even though I love Jordan Love, hasn't been good enough every week to beat with a fine defense. But yeah, it was still a very impressive win for the Vikings and. We get an exciting Sunday Night Football, which I think if the Packers won this game, Sunday Night Football would have been awful next week. But now we get Vikings-Lions winner gets the 1 seed, which is a cool place to be. I don't know where you sit on the Vikings v Lions debate. I'd imagine you sit on the Lions probably going to win the 1 seed, or are you now Sam Darnold pilled?
I would say I think the Lions are just better, but. I think it'd be really close. I mean, and if the Vikings are the 1 seed, I wouldn't complain. I think that's such a cool story. I think the Lions, I just feel like even with all these injuries, still getting so much out of them. I just feel like the story's there. I feel like I just feel like they're just going to complete the dream season.
I think the playoffs are more fun if the Lions are the 5 seed.
That would make it very fun.
But the Lions are home, aren't they, in that game? But I think it'll be high scoring because there's so many injuries on the Lions defense. I think the Vikings will be able to score with Kevin O'Connell. But
an interesting thing to watch going into that game as well is Aaron Jones. Obviously, he's quite banged up. He's had a lot of time not in the game, in the game, not on the weekend. They're also missing kicks, both teams as well. So it could come down to a missed kick. I mean, obviously Brian Flores' defense has been up and down, but he's had good games. They've had poor games. The game this week was a vintage game for them going up against the quarterback that he wanted of all the ones in the 2020 class. He wanted Jordan Love. It's quite He didn't want Joe Burrow. He didn't want Justin Herbert. He didn't want Tua. He wanted Jordan Love. He wanted to take a tackle early on and then take Jordan Love later on. So I'm sure going up against him twice a year at the minute is quite a thing for Flores. But again, he had a good game, a really good game that defense did. And yeah, fair play to the Vikings. And then because they won, obviously the Lions had nothing to play for last night on the final Monday Night Football game of the year. They got one playoff game, but it's like the final regular season one. But that didn't stop Dan Campbell, who played his starters all night and got revenge on the Niners, who came from behind to beat them in the NFC Championship game last year. It was a close game, lots of points. Again, kickers missed for 2 field goals and 3 extra points. So if a couple of them went in, it could have been a different way. Than the Niners could have won if Jake Moody had a game, but he didn't. He had a terrible game. I mean, Jahmyr Gibbs won me a fantasy league, so he needs to get 5 or 6 points more than Amon-Ra, and he just did that. So sorry, Charlie. Jahmyr Gibbs had a game. But I'm not sure it's smart to risk injuries with how the Lions have been. But I mean, that's Dan Campbell for you, isn't it? Really?
Yeah, it's for the culture, but yeah, it's definitely a stupid decision. But
yeah.
Who was going to do it just for the culture of the team? And the players probably appreciated it, but they just got lucky that no one got hurt, right? If someone would have got hurt, that would have been the story all day. That, oh my God, just say Jahmyr Gibbs got hurt, that'd be it. It'd be like Dan Campbell's an idiot. So, yeah, they were always going to do it. I didn't think there was ever a chance they'd rest players. But yeah, you're right. With the injuries they've had, it would have been smarter probably to not do it because this game didn't really mean anything to them. But I'm sure from a culture, team building, beat the team that knocked you out last year, it meant a lot to the players for him to go and play them. And yeah, Gibbs won you a fantasy league, and Jameson Williams with his touchdown won me a fantasy league by 2 points. So I was very happy with that game. But yeah, I'd like to say I've been vindicated by my Brock Purdy slander because he was terrible again in this game. So
well, that's the thing. We've seen debates on Twitter about how much money is he going to get. Like
he's going to get a lot. Yes.
Yeah. It's just, I mean, could the Niners go out and pay Sam Darnold? No, I'm joking. But it's like, I mean, it is going to cause debate because I think you've seen that with Tua this year. Obviously, very similar quarterbacks. He's played very well when he's been healthy. But again, when you're paying the guy $55 million a year and he misses 5-6 games in the season, then you're gonna. And with Purdy, it's like, can he elevate when the Niners, if they do pay him, aren't going to be as good of a team? And we've seen this year of injuries that he can't do that.
Yeah, he's making more mistakes, way more mistakes than he did before. So he's just a different quarterback. He's a bit more boom bust than people thought, in a good way, as in he makes plays off out of structure, which people didn't think Purdy would do, and he has proved he can do that. But he's also
he's really good with his legs as well.
He's just not the point and shoot, do whatever Kyle Shanahan says that people thought he was either, because he's made so many mistakes where Kyle Shanahan's after the game is just like, yeah, that wasn't what he was supposed to do. So
it's like the one that last week against the Dolphins, again, same thing, pick in the fourth quarter, sealed the game. Like, don't know how he was throwing at. But
yeah, it's happened 3 or 4 times this year for them. So yeah, we'll see. I think he will get paid. I don't think he will get paid. If you'd have asked 12 months ago, I think he probably would have become the top paid or second, third in the league, just because he was the next guy. I don't think it'll be that much, but I'll be surprised if he doesn't get in the top 5 or 6. And you'll have a lot of people like me on podcasts saying that's a bad move. But
I expect they'll probably look at the Tua and Trevor Lawrence contracts, sort of 3rd, 4th. I think that's probably where it'll be.
They'll probably look at the Tua deal, and his agent will probably just say, "Give me slightly more than that." That's probably what they'll try and do. But
yeah, probably.
Yeah, we'll see.
Yeah, I mean, obviously that then sets up the straight fight for the 1 seed, which I mean, you mentioned it there. I don't know what if the Packers won. I don't know what the last game would have been. Maybe I don't know what would it because you would need something to be competitive. Maybe the Falcons winning to maybe win the division.
Yeah, it might have been the Bucks Panthers game, maybe.
Yeah,
it wouldn't have been great to be honest.
No,
maybe they would have gone. Maybe they would have gone Steelers, Bengals,
and
just risked it and hoped that the Broncos had lost before, and the Dolphins had lost. That's what they would have maybe hoped for. But yeah, they've got lucky that there is an actual game they can put on Sunday Night Football.
Absolutely, and I mean, if you were to guess, who do you think will come out on top?
I've been pretty Vikings pilled all year, to be honest. So, yeah, I probably would go for the Vikings. I think
Nice.
Kevin O'Connell which is probably a hot take, is a better play caller than Ben Johnson, even though Ben Johnson's extremely good. And I think, they'll just win. But yeah, who knows? There's two quarterbacks there that could throw for 350 yards and 3 touchdowns, or they could throw 3 picks because they're not the best quarterbacks under pressure. And both the defensive coordinators are going to try and blitz them to death. But yeah, I'd probably go for the Vikings, I would say. But yeah, that might be my heart speaking more than my head. Who knows? I've not been as high on the Lions as others this year. So yeah, I'll probably go for the Vikings, but it'll be close.
I was really high on them when they had the defense. Now the defense is so injured. Yeah, it's tough. I'd still go Lions, but I think
it'd be a shootout.
It'd be a bigger game. I mean, there's no way I'm sleeping through that game. Absolutely no way.
Yeah, it's gonna be a fun one.
We've got a fun week of football. Obviously, the college football quarterfinals over the next couple of days as well, so you can watch them all on Sky. That'll be good to watch as well, especially if everyone here in the UK over New Year, if you want some sport to watch. If there's not enough for you already because it's Christmas, there's going to be loads of sport. But no, yeah, those are over the next couple of days as well. And we'll just finish the podcast with one of the most interesting stories of the week. We'll go to the draft order, where the top of it has just completely flipped after the games on Sunday. Heading into week, the Giants and the Raiders occupy the top 2 picks in the draft order, but the Giants ended the Colts season knocking them out of the playoff hunt and themselves from 1st to 4th. And then the Raiders beat the Saints and dropped all the way to number 8 from number 2 in the draft order. So now the Patriots talk about the number 1 pick after picking 3rd last year. The Titans are at number 2 now, and the Browns are at number 3. I mean, obviously, these 2 wins could really hurt both these teams because obviously they're both quarterback needy teams. In most mocks, they predicted to take Cam Ward and Shador Sanders in various different orders, but those are the sort of first 2 picks on pretty much every mock in some order. And obviously now those 2 teams have been jumped by 2 more QB needy teams, you could say, in the Titans and the Browns, because obviously with Deshaun, and obviously in the Raiders case, the Jets have jumped them as well, and they could be looking for a quarterback too. So yeah, for 2 franchises that have been terrible forever, it's just so typical, isn't it?
Yeah, it's very typical. Happened twice. Well, happened 3 times really, but happened twice for the Giants as well because they lost a game, which meant they weren't in the position to draft Herbert a few years ago, and they went for. Oh, sorry, no, they could have drafted Herbert, but they wanted Tua apparently, and then they ended up drafting Saquon. I think that was the year. I can't remember.
It was Andrew Thomas. They took it 4.
Oh yeah, that was it. Yeah,
yeah.
And then there's a lot of chat. They liked Drake May last year, and then they won that game, which meant they were out of position. Tommy DeVito won 2 in a row to take them out of contention last year for that pick, and now they've won this game, and they've dropped from 1 to 4, and they had an 85% chance of 1 before the game, and now they've got like a 8% chance of pick 1. So yeah, very typical for both these 2 teams. I think for the Raiders, they just need a quarterback because the owner is a situation, and yeah, so I think it hurts them more from we need a quarterback. For the Giants, I think it was just to be in the top 2 and just have the decision to do what you want, trade out, take a quarterback, take someone else. I think that's the element that will hurt them the most because I think the Raiders just need one as a franchise, whereas I think for the Giants, they at least would have been able to have a big trade with like the Patriots or with someone. They could have had a trade up or trade down if they wanted to, but now they're probably going to have to move a 1st-round pick to get a quarterback. And spoiler alert, before we get to our draft content over the summer, I don't think this is the year you want to be trading a future first. I like Cam Ward personally, but I don't think Sanders is going to be that good in the NFL. So yeah, I think the Giants just screwed it again. And Raiders, I could see them being the team that trades that 1st-round pick now and goes up to number 1 with New England. And then if it goes well, everyone will say great job. If it doesn't, then it'll be another 5-year rebuild for the Raiders. So yeah, these 2 teams really screwed themselves. And to be honest, the Colts probably screwed themselves. And I say Gus Bradley and Chris Ballard are probably on the hot seat now as well. So yeah, all 3 teams involved, apart from the Saints, probably screwed themselves a little bit this weekend.
And you mentioned it last week as well. I mean, the Steichen as well. Like, there's a lot of talk about him this week, which I thought was quite
I think I'd definitely keep him, but Ballard's been like the Grim Reaper, getting rid of head coaches and keeping his job. So who knows? But yeah, even though they won and like you're supposed to be happy for your team winning, that Giants Colts game was just a disaster for everyone.
We saw some punt return touchdowns. We saw some terrible Joe Flacco interceptions. It was like
a lot of yak, 200 yards of yak for like the Giants. Malik Neighbors had 100 odd yards of yak, which is nuts.
I was about to say, Charlie, again, we had, I think I had 175, he had 171, and Neighbors was a big part of that. Like we scored tons of points, just had,
Yeah, people who had Drew Lock as well in 2 QB leagues
I know,
randomly.
Drew Lock getting 5 touchdowns. I would have thought that going into the weekend.
Yeah, and he scored a rushing touchdown as well, didn't he?
Yeah.
So yeah, it was mental. But yeah, I'm not as high on the QB class, but the Giants have just made an error again, and the Raiders just seem so desperate. I think the problem is they'll make a desperate move now and do a trade up. I think that's going to be the biggest issue. But for New England at number one,
About to say,
incredible,
all the
incredible
leverage.
position. You've got your quarterback. They'll definitely do a trade. They'd be very stupid to take Travis Hunter or Will Campbell at 1. Trading back is the smart move, and I think they'll realize that, and they'll pull off a trade. And then Tennessee at 2, if they don't like Will Levis anymore, which I don't think they probably do, then they get whoever the next guy is. I would just say Cam Ward is a little bit Will Levis-y for some people who watch the draft content. And then, yeah, again, another interesting one. Cleveland at 3, what are they going to do? They've just restructured that Deshaun Watson contract. Imagine if they had Deshaun Watson and Shedeur Sanders in the same locker room. That would be the most crazy diva locker room in the NFL. But, yeah, it's a fun top 3 now in terms of content, but the Giants and Raiders definitely screwed themselves.
Yeah, absolutely. And I'm sure all the other thing as well is the Giants going to have a new head coach? Are they going to have a new GM? We've said they're going to be, obviously, there's been reports they're going to be brought back, but like if they lose, the chance to get a quarterback, they might just think, we're just going to start over again. Yeah, I mean, I'm sure Brian Dable looking at it would really like Cam Ward because again, you've got a bit of Josh Allen, a bit of Will Levis in there. Like, I'm sure he would like that kind of quarterback compared to Daniel Jones, but.
Yeah, because he did like running Daniel Jones, which Cam Ward can do as well. So and Sanders can do as well. But yeah, I think he'd probably like that. My intuition says the fact they fought so hard to win this game, and he could have played Tim Boyle, and he still played Drew Lock. You'd like to think he thinks he's safe, and then he's just. Sorry, no, you'd like to think he doesn't think he's safe because he was so desperate to win this game, which tells you he might not be safe. But if they turned out he is safe and they still played Drew Lock and they won that game, then that's such bad coaching job because he screwed himself out of a quarterback. But yeah, we'll see. The Giants have been a mess since basically the Eli Super Bowl. So yeah, and for the Raiders are just the just the Raiders. But yeah, it's interesting to have the Jags at 5 at the moment, Tennessee at 2. And then the Jets at 7. I think the top 8 of the draft is crazy. And it seems mad that you're the Chicago Bears. You've only won 4 games. You've lost 10 in a row. And you've only got the 9th pick. That is just mental. I've never seen that in the NFL. Normally, if you've got 4 losses, you're in the top 5. So, yeah, it's been a weird year. A lot of bad football and a lot of good football. Not much in between this year.
Yeah, and then there's a big drop off between teams with 4 wins and teams with 7 wins. It's like a 7-win season could get you a high draft pick now, which is just so weird. It's like that's very unnatural. I think.
Well, the Cowboys have probably won too many games over the end of the season because they could have got a top 10 pick. But yeah, the 49ers have got 6 wins and they're 11. So they might pay Brock Purdy and then pick 11. They'll be able to say, right, let's trade Deebo Samuel and draft a wide receiver, start a bit of a rebuild. So they're in a good position. But yeah, you're right. To have 7 wins, I think Miami have got 8 wins at the moment and they're 15th. Normally, like you've been near the 20s, like you've been in the 20s looking at 8 wins. So, yeah, it's a very weird year, but it'll probably mean the fun draft process for us to talk about.
Absolutely, and then the whole thing with Aaron Rodgers. What does he do? Does he leave the Jets to do a different team? Like maybe Rodgers ends up at the Raiders. Like
I hope he stays, and then Garrett Wilson is a chief. That's my dream, but we'll see.
Oh, nice. That's a dream. About to say that does sound like a bit of a dream world there, but
I think he'll probably play, but I don't know who he'll play for.
Yeah, that's the thing. It doesn't sound like he really wants to stay in New York, so we'll see. But again, yeah, that is going to be a very interesting year with lots of QB movement. Again, where does Sam Darnold go? Does he stay in Minnesota? I think that's a very interesting decision to make there too. Like, what do you think they do?
I think they probably tag him. They probably play one more year with him and use the excuse of JJ McCarthy's knee, get him a bit more experience behind Sam, and then logic says Sam probably doesn't play as well, and then it's an easier decision next year. And then if he does play really well, you can just tag him again. So I would say he probably gets tagged. I'll be very surprised if they pay him a long-term deal. It doesn't make sense if they really do like JJ McCarthy. And everything you read was JJ was quite close to starting before he got hurt. So they obviously like him. So yeah, I'd say they tag him, play one more year, give JJ another year to sit, and then if it works out great again, they can then do whatever they can trade JJ the year after.
Say you never know. Some team might get so desperate they're going to trade picks for him. So
yeah, exactly. So I think that's what they will probably do. I'd say the least likely is a long-term extension, and then again they've got the safety net of the tag. Like, he doesn't have to, if they don't want him to get to free agency, they just tag him and then that's it, done. So yeah, I'd say that's probably what happens. He's probably earned that as well, because even though it's not as good as a 3-year Baker Mayfield extension, it's still going to be like 30 million guaranteed on the tag. So like that's still more money than he ever thought he would get after he left the Jets. So
yeah, no, he's certainly earned it. And again, he could be quarterback in a 1-seed team by the time we next have the podcast. So there you are.
Okay, if he gets the Super Bowl.
Yeah, exactly. He's like, he's just going to go up and up and up. What a season it's been. It's been one of the strangest I can remember. And again, we're at week 18 now. By the time I next speak to you on the Full 10 Yards NFL podcast, the regular season would have concluded and we'll be talking about the playoffs. So there we go. Season's gone very quick. I hope you guys have a happy new year. I hope you have a good Christmas as well. I've been Sam. Big thank you to Janine for joining me here. It's been a Full 10 Yards NFL podcast, and I'll see you next time.